Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. This is Bemi for the Future channel. Good morning, good afternoon and good evening depending on where you are watching from. I'm going to be reading the news shortly, but if you have been watching without subscribing, please click the red button below and turn on notification so that anytime we upload you will be notified. Thank you. An investigative journalist based in Ghana exposes a massive COVID-19 scam and was interviewed by TVC News. Kindly watch and let me know your thoughts on this.
As the world struggles to find a vaccine for the novel coronavirus, so many people have come forward with claims of having a cure for the virus. An underworld of quack doctors and con men have been exploiting the COVID-19 pandemic and making money selling fake coronavirus cures. Investigative reporter Anas went undercover in Ghana, exposing a COVID-19 scam said to be worth thousands of dollars. He joins me now via Skype from Accra in Ghana. Anas, good morning. It's good to have you join me this morning. And let me say that we really appreciate what you're doing and we commend your effort in investigative journalism. In your documentary, your expose documentary, Corona Quacks, COVID Quacks as the case may be, talk to us basically, what was the greatest surprise that you found at the course of doing this investigation?
Well, the story happened both in Ghana and Nigeria, as you already know. And the motivation for the story was simply the fact that during the lockdown, all of us had to deal with
all right. Now, after this, it seems the line has gone off. Okay. Now, there is a documentary by Anas Corona Quacks, and that has exposed a lot of scams during this pandemic, where a lot of people came up with claims of breakthroughs, claims of vaccines, claims of cures in parts, not just in Ghana, but across so many countries of the world and even in Africa. Now, okay, Anas, I understand Anas is back on now, yeah? The line went off briefly. It's nice to have you back. You were saying something earlier.
Yes, I was saying that under this lockdown, all of us felt that heavy burden of thinking of cures and others, which sometimes makes the journalists forget that we are living in a special time and that we have to apply our tools. Having done this job for a while, I know that when things like this happen, there are certain people whose mindset will be to exploit the situation and make a lot of money out of it. So my aim in this investigation was to go deep down there to see those who are taking advantage of the panic situation, those who are taking advantage of the gullible people to make a lot of money. The investigation, like I said, started in Nigeria, where we met a pharmacist, Dr. Abdul, who claimed to have a cure for COVID-19 and who claimed he could cure cancer. And we saw a pastor too in the film. You see a pastor who claims he has a cure. You see another herbalist who says he has a cure and all that. Now, all this is fine. I'm a very strong believer in traditional medicine. But all this ought to be measured against science, especially when we all know that there is no cure for AIDS. There is no cure for COVID-19. If somebody begins to bring this, it's worthwhile looking at it. Now, back to Ghana. So in Ghana, the undercover featured two main organizations. One is called Koa FX and the other is the Abdallah Brothers. Now, the other Abdallah Brothers were a part of Ghana and took advantage of the region, which I can say is not very, very developed like Accra. So went on radio, announced that they've gotten cure for COVID-19, went on TV, made similar announcements and urged people to come and buy. Now, whilst saying this, they urged people that though they were putting out these advert, they were going through the regulatory agency to ensure that this drug was finally approved. We went behind the scenes undercover, spoke to them, and they were busily selling. They had, according to their own words, they had sent some to Italy. They were treating some ministers of state, and they had given lots of it out to people. Now, the big question was, had this been tested? Now, in fact, in one of our meetings, they told us the vice president of Senegal had requested for some of the medication. So they whipped up quite a lot of sentiment around it, urging people.
The vice president of Senegal, do they have the office of the vice president?
That is, they have no office of the vice. That's what I'm saying. Okay. When these quack people take advantage, they will say anything to convince you. You understand? They even mentioned our king, the big king here, the Asante Hene, that he was also someone who had endorsed this particular thing and was doing business.
Okay. And as certainly one would see all of those as really deceitful on their own parts, trying to, say what is actually not founded and what is practically not on ground or factually on ground. Now, talk to us basically, because you mentioned earlier that they went on radio and went on TV to make these claims. And it is of great concern that anyone will come up on TV where there are regulations, where there are supposed to be regulations. Talk to us about that. How is the media regulatory authorities handling when people come to make false claims on air?
Well, the false claims, first of all, ought to be investigated. And that's exactly what we did in this particular film, trying to measure what we've heard with scientific evidence. So you see us going to the lab, the Ghana Standard Authority, which is ISO certified, one of the best in the world, and putting this drug to test and looking at the ingredients. For example, in the Abdallah brothers, you would find that they had a lot of infestation of yeast and mold, uncountable numbers, and had even something we call phosphate, which could all be detrimental to human health. And when I was negotiating with them, one of them warned me that if you take one of the medicine, you could get diarrhea, and that if you get diarrhea, it's just a sign that the medicine was very potent. And knowing a kind of system we live in, people take advantage of this, and you never know who buys it. Could be your sister, could be your brother, could be anybody. So yes, back to the regulatory authority. For me, yes, regulatory authorities will be there every day, but it will be, the onus will lie on us, the public and journalists, to rake out some of these things and put out there against the constraints that regulatory officers have. Poor number of people, poor salaries across the African continent. Regulators cry every day. Forget not that the thing is out there on the market for me and you. I am, like I said, a strong believer of traditional medicine, and many other friends of mine are. If we don't take that important step to talk about this and to push the frontiers of making this known and getting our people educated about it, at the end of the day, if anybody should be dying, I tell you, it's not going to be the regulators, it's going to be me and you.
Exactly. All right. Now, in your documentary, the Abdullah brothers you talked about were eventually arrested by the authorities. But we also know that it is not just the Abdullah brothers or the COA FS that are involved in this. There are so many others who have different claims. What is the authorities doing to ensure that they minimize or arrest or ensure they stamp out all of these quacks that are posing threats to the public?
First of all, I must emphatically state here that our regulator was already working independently on this particular subject. Again, the regulator had on their own issued an earlier statement on COA FX, saying that in fact, their product was infested with E. coli, which are remnants of feces, intestinal matter, and all that. So on that, it's very difficult to blame the regulator. But generally, regulators across the African continent have this pushing of this sit down and not approach things in a very strong way. They will give all sorts of reasons, but I think that we have to keep on pushing. And I think that, like I have said already, it's not going to just be we can't just fold our arms and look at the regulator. We have to keep them on their toes every single time. We have to prove to them that indeed, as citizens, we deserve to be given the best.
All right. Well, I really agree with you. As citizens, everyone deserves the best. Thank you so much, Anas, for what you do and what you're doing in Ghana and even across the African continent.